But back to Train Dreams, I said, okay, I need to get on set and see what are the moving parts, what are the components, what's the anatomy of like what they call a Northwestern, right? It's a Western in the Northwest, and which there are very few.
What's a Northwestern?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, and there aren't that many of them, right? It's really rare. You got like the Montana Westerns, but the bulk of them are all, Oklahoma, Texas, California, just Wyoming, wherever, out on the plains, Kansas. That's your traditional American Western.
Dynamite Mike, podcast that you like.
We're live.
We're live.
All right.
Welcome, Larry. Tell the world about you.
Well, where do you want to start?
Start with Train Dreams. That was a good one.
Train Dreams was a good
How did you get involved with that? How did you...
I guess been in the acting community for about three and a half years. Started during COVID when I was bored out of my mind and probably watching too much film. Just had a wild hair. And Train Dreams was an interesting one. I actually wish that I was aware of it when I could have auditioned for a part, like a speaking role. And then it was just, this is cool. I need to get on set. Largely because it was a period piece, is what drew my interest in the Northwest, which was really similar. I just said, that's going to have a lot of parallels with a project that I'm working on in the Silver Valley it's a writing production process. Ultimately, I'd like it to be an episodic. I think it's the only thing that's going to really do justice to the story, because it's just such a huge story. A lot of action packed into about 2 decades, but it's pretty constant. Mm-hmm. So that was a story I stumbled upon. I don't know, man. It was about the time that Deadwood came out, which is a HBO Western series. Mining Town, all of that. David Milch wrote and directed. And it was actually the first time I saw Deadwood. It didn't quite catch me, right? I think it was for whatever reason. And then, like many things, the second time that I saw it, I was like, oh man, there's a lot going on here. The writing is just golden. I loved basically just the dialogue being that vulgar sort of Western. Yeah, it was David Milch, so it was as rough and vulgar of a dialect as you could get, but then it had like those very proper sort of British, turn of the century or earlier.
Victorian.
Yeah. Kind of Victorian, sort of, but then they'd taken it out west. And I think that a lot of that existed, right? If you think about it. But then you have the brilliance of David Milch, and, and on top of that, he's writing it largely in iambic pentameter, so, which is like the Shakespearean rhythm. So there's just a lot of layers to it. The storyline was good, but mostly the dialogue, I think, is what got me. And I liked the grittiness of it. It was a little like gratuitous on the grittiness part for, my specific personal taste. But I liked it. I liked the raw nature of it. Anyway, so there was kind of a story of a mining family that was associated with a property that my grandparents had. And there was all this lore about the people that had built this house, 100 years ago. It was on the lake, and it was just, there were a lot of woods around and old outbuildings, and it was just kind of a mystical, magical place because it had a patina to it, right? So it's just a lot of wear and tear. It was in good shape for its age, it had great bones, and just everything about it, the way it was laid out, it was magical. I think that place was the reason that I got interested in architecture from, as a child, and always held that as something that I thought I wanted to do. At any rate, there was all this lore, tales of, the Day family and Lucy Day, and there were ghost stories, and we just, I think as a family, growing up out there, having cousins that, that was our magical place, that was where we all convened, that's why we were close. So it held that sort of mysticism and magic, and then there were all these stories, and at some point, I think I just became more and more interested in the history and all these sort of tales, tall tales, whatever they were, that were told throughout the years. Well, ultimately, I stumbled upon this book in the library that's been there the entire time, because a lot of the furnishings and everything came with the house. And there's this old library that came with a number of books. Well, I find this book called Days of the Hercules. Evidently, nobody had ever stumbled upon it before. And it was this 300-page book about the Day family and the mine that they were involved in, the Hercules mine. So I read this book, like I said, about that same time, and it just hit me like, oh my God, this would make... It's just a much better setting and premise for something like Deadwood, right? Because Deadwood was largely based on, actual history and actual characters. He obviously left a lot of room for, his own artistic vision. And, yeah. And I think I just went a long time going, man, somebody should do that. Somebody should do that. It never occurred to me. And then 2019 comes along. Maybe it was 2020. And I start, Coach Rick's acting class. I jump in there. I'd started seeing another acting coach early on, and was just kind of getting antsy and wanted to get into a group of people where you could play things out and interact. So I got in there. It was amazing. I mean, he's a phenomenal coach, also really tied into everything, and just really good group of people. For me, that was somebody that wasn't comfortable getting in front of people. It was kind of a really random move. I think it was kind of a personal challenge as well. Got into that and then got comfortable enough with it that I started to see the process. It's like, well, shit, I'll take a stab at writing at least a short version of this. And then I just started to dig into the history a little bit more. And there's a phenomenal amount of, history books. I'd say the lion's share of which were written in like the 40s and 50s and 60s. Most of them on, shelves collecting dust. And yeah, then I started to dive into it, and the story just started to expand and get bigger and bigger and bigger, almost overwhelming at a point. And it was actually kind of impacting the whole writing, which I had no experience at writing at all. So I remain unproven on that, and still not very happy with my dialogue. But, coming from an architectural background and construction background, I mean, I'm finding that the production of something like this, a project like this, is very much like an architecture. Mm-hmm. So you're building something, right? And it all has to kind of work together, and there are these components, and it's functional architecture. It's got to be visually pleasing. There's a structure. So really happy with the way that the structure and the outline and the character development and the timeline were all coming together. Even kind of weaving like the arcs in. So it's like not really one arc. One, it's history, right? So you're not making anything up. So having that sort of traditional arc of a story wasn't really the way to go, or at least not the way that I chose to go. I suppose you could, because there's some great lessons to be learned in the stories that happened over there. So ultimately, their personal story led me to where this mine, the Hercules mine, was. It still, exists today. It's under there. They buried the entrances, but it was a very famous deal. Anyway, I'll carry on more about that. But back to Train Dreams, I said, okay, I need to get on set and see, what are the moving parts, what are the components, what's the anatomy of like what they call a Northwestern, right? It's a Western in the Northwest, and which there are very few.
What's a Northwestern?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, and there aren't that many of them, right? It's really rare. You got like the Montana Westerns, mm-hmm. But the bulk of them are all, Oklahoma, Texas, California, just Wyoming, wherever, out on the plains, Kansas. That's your traditional American Western. So The environment's totally different, which I like. I think it's a little more dynamic. You got a lot more topography. The Silver Valley of Idaho's just steep and deep and green, right? It's a totally different environment than you're used to. It's a lot richer, and in my mind, it's a lot more dynamic. And just a lot of things just started to occur to me as the more I looked into it. It's just like this, aside from all the crazy different stories, so going back to that arc, that parallel, but anyway, I'm falling back into the story because that's all I want to talk about.
Yeah, no
most
worries.
of the time. But Train Dreams, that's how I got on Train Dreams, and Train Dreams was fun. It was, I mean, I didn't have really any sort of experience with any sort of production of that size at that point. That's still the biggest thing I've worked on. And again, I was just background. I was told that I was actually the most featured background.
Huh.
I show up most and have the most screen time, even though they're just blips. So I haven't gone to see if that's true or not. But one of the sad things about it to me, though, is that I had 2 really good scenes. My favorite one was just me, Joel Edgerton on one side, and William H. Macy on the other side, and just sitting at the fire. And they're just having a conversation. I don't have any lines, but I'm just there, and I'm just happy as a clam. And it's late at night. Like, I think it was actually 3 a.m. by the time we got around to filming that. But that scene got deleted, and I was so excited to see that scene. But yeah, the thing just turned out beautifully. Everybody was kind of saying, "Oh, this is a shit show. I don't know what's going to happen here." I didn't know what to expect or have anything to weigh it against, but really cool experience. And so the filming I did was all up in Medellin Falls, Colville, and Chihuahua, or on the outskirts, out in the woods. But beautiful, on-site locations. People were, it seemed functional to me, but I didn't, again, have anything I had no baseline to go off of. But yeah, all in all, a really good experience. Worked with really wonderful people. It was nice because there were a lot of, the local industries, relatively tight-knit, very talented, but very tight-knit. So there were several people that I'd worked with before, so it felt comfortable. Wardrobe and sound and all the normal crew people that you work with were there. A lot of the same video people. I had the time of my life. And then to see what it became, because you don't know that it's going to be something like that. I'd read the book, and I thought, I had come to the conclusion, it was this short novella by Dennis Johnson, was nominated for a Pulitzer, but won the National Book Award. I just kind of said, this is got to be narrated, and it's going to be highly artistic. And so that was kind of fun to see that, turn out to be true. Then after having read the book, just even driving up, to these locations, listening to the book on audio just kind of really brought it to life even before I got there. So yeah, really fun, kind of a magical, when you're on set, you feel like you're in that era, right? And you're in costume, and it's just really like, you're there, you got cameras and all this other stuff kind of cruising around, but it doesn't seem to affect you that much. At least it didn't for me, and I don't think it did for most. And you also have those types of professionals that I think are really good at just letting you sink into it, and accommodating that. So the whole thing was it was a great time. I really liked it. You didn't know where you were going or where you're going to show up until sometimes midnight the night before. Because for whatever reason, I don't know if that's common or not, because again, pretty green on this sort of stuff. But
how many days were you shooting for?
I shot for 4 days.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually only about half of the scenes that I shot made it into the film. I suspect a lot of that is because they were just so heavily focused on the cinematography, and having it just that artistic nature, and probably just shot enough material to just figure out, okay, what now can we got more pieces than we need, which ones are going to fit together best, and deliver the story. So yeah, really cool.
Good for you. Nice.
Yeah.
So how did you manage to get on that production?
Actually, so really through Coach Rick's class. Yeah, Jennifer Simmons was the background casting director. And she's connected with that class. She's actually a really good friend at this point, after that and everything else. And we worked scenes together, just really rad. She was in the film as well. She got cut too. A lot of people got cut. I think I got lucky just because I was on the logging side. And strategically, I'd told her, it's like, because a couple of things got thrown out, to go down to Tico and shoot and be part of a church scene and a theater scene. And I just said, the logging, that really suits what I'm looking for, to experience, because I want to see how that type of production's done, out in the field, like out the literal woods. And turned out to be a good choice because, that was most of the movie. So there's just a lot more logging scenes, and it just kept getting placed, like, in all the right places. But they're really, like, literally my 3 best scenes didn't end up in the movie. They were my favorite to film, and it just felt like I got to be more central. Almost to the point where I was like, God, I'm going to be in every scene. That might be kind of weird, but it was cool. It was really cool. And I did have the opportunity to go over to the west side, because they shot, you can see in the film where it becomes, you start seeing a lot more ferns and cedar and things like that. And I was kind of burnt out because it's exhausting, right? And it just seemed like, okay, I've done enough. And now seeing what it, became, I wish I'd have gone over there and participated more. But it was cool. Everybody's really friendly. You're not supposed to talk to, like, the top talent, but they would talk to you. And
well, that's cool.
It was pretty rad. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And it did good. And then from that, you realized you want to do this deep dive into the world of silver mining.
Well, it wasn't so much from that. Actually, that story led me to
getting on set.
Well, to put the extra effort in to get on that set. Yeah.
Cool.
Like, I was really pretty certain I wanted to get on there.
And then being on set and experiencing that, does that put more of a fire in your stomach to do this, to investigate this story?
It really
further?
turns the magic on, for sure. So yeah, I think it put a little bit more of a fire in. It also, it really informs the process, right? Because, like, it's similar to be like architecture and construction, where, a lot of times architects and contractors don't get along because an architect can design something really nice and really cool. Mm-hmm. And it works statically, right? It's like, okay, those pieces all connect, but the assembly, the process, like, it's really not practically buildable. So practicality really informs, and I don't know what's practical or not practical until you start to see what all goes into certain types of scenes, right? For instance, just shooting out in the woods is pretty cheap because the set's built, right? You throw up some tents and some clapwood buildings and get some just whatever you take to put together the set and costumes, and you go. Whereas I think a lot of films take a lot. I think that's largely what drove the Western, being really big in the 50s, 60s, I guess most of the times, because they were pretty cheap to film. Now, Deadwood, I guess, was a different story. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, that was one of the most, when HBO did that, it was one of the most expensive sets that, because they built out a whole town, right? Mm-hmm. But, and it's interesting, like, I keep thinking about when I start to really study the Westerns, you start to notice that most of the buildings are not actually, they're kind of in the background, but they're not actually human scale.
Oh.
They're like 3/4 scale or smaller. And some of them, like if you're paying attention, they're almost hilariously small. Next time you watch a Western, pay attention to that. When you get into that, frontier town, the scale of the buildings is really interesting. I think my favorite one is Tombstone. That one seems to be all to scale, man. And it's like, they got some decorators in there that they nailed it. And I think it just aged really well, right? Where a lot of these films, it's like, okay, it's the Western town, but you can tell that's got a really 60s touch to it, right? Or 50s, whichever era it was filmed in, to just kind of give it that edge and make it look sharp for that audience.
It makes it seem more realistic. I feel you, because there was this...
And the haircuts and whatever, even the wardrobe it'll have that sort of cut or whatever it is. And, if it's done in the 80s, they got a little bit more 80s hair. It's a little more feathered out in the, prairie. But it's really cool. So then this led, like, Westerns weren't necessarily, I've always liked them. Tombstone's probably been one of my favorite films for a long time, and Deadwood was rad. But Westerns weren't like, my go-to genre. But then when I started to get into this and realize, okay, this is effectively a Western, I started to really just study the Westerns. And just kind of, what's the anatomy of a good Western? So, yeah, it's just like I said, I think, especially if you're not filming in the town. So, like, Train Dreams doesn't really have a town. They built the cabin, and they did some makeshift stuff to, like, they got the store and the train station up at Bonners Ferry that you see very briefly. It gives you a sense of place, and then you've got the trains, right? But really, it's just kind of, it's the sky, and they filmed, like, they caught all the balsam, like, in its prime, the yellow flowers that are so ubiquitous around Spokane, that are starting to pop off right now.
Yeah.
And what Adolfo, the cinematographer, did with that, the color, I've never seen it look quite like that, but it just really brought it to life. And just some of that, like, out in the Scabland type areas that I think it's really easy to not appreciate those, but I think he zoomed in on it and caught it in its light, and it's gorgeous. And these are also the types of things that growing up around here you don't really necessarily appreciate. I think, like, pine trees, right? That just your ponderosa. It's like, growing up, I think that was like the most boring tree to me that, in the world, because there were so many of them. They were everywhere. Now I think they're one of the most beautiful, man, especially like a old growth ponderosa. The trunk turns red and it's got that puzzly bark, and it's just like, there's nothing else. It's pretty rare to our area. So people come from out, areas not in the Northwest. I mean, you can find that stuff in California a little bit, in Arizona, up in, like, Flagstaff, and probably Colorado. But if you're coming from the East Coast, people are just like, wow, it's like they're seeing a cactus for the first time or something. It's like probably how we look at palm trees. Like, if you're not from there, if you're not used to it, it's exotic. So, yeah, I'm probably rambling here, but
that's fine.
I'm really good at that. So, yeah, that was Train Dreams. That's not necessarily what led me to the Wallace Project. I was on the tail of that. Well before that, that's really kind of what led me to Train Dreams. And it worked out really well.
So you brought up something, what makes a good Western? And I started thinking about that. I think it's a good mix of nostalgia, people longing for a simpler life to where they're working for it. There's some sort of nostalgia, there's some sort of American grit to it. And then there's savagery. There's just raw savagery, because this is a new time. You had the Louisiana Purchase, not that long before this. So the federal government purchased all this land, and it's just unsettled land ran by the uncivilized tribes, so the tribes that weren't willing to do commerce with the U.S. government. And the U.S. government's like, hey, we need to convince all these immigrants to go and settle all this Indian country. And like, hey, you guys can go put up a
Yeah.
fence, and you can have whatever you fence off. Just go out there and survive. So they risk life and scalp to go out and make
Well, yeah,
this
I
happen.
mean, that was the westward migration, right? And it's like, I think it was a lot of people that had almost nothing, right?
Yeah, they're
And it's
mostly
like,
immigrants.
You can have, I
convince
think,
immigrants.
the initial homesteading, if I'm correct, was like 360. You could have 360 acres if you just go out there and stake it and work it and live there for a certain period of time. It's yours.
No property tax.
Yeah, and then ultimately, I think it was 180, right? So
Yeah.
cut in half. But still extremely attractive, and I think there were probably a lot of pamphlets and et cetera circulating saying how just magical Oregon territory was. You know, Washington was part of Oregon territory at that time. So yeah, I mean, Louisiana Purchase was, I don't know the dates on that. My knowledge of history, especially East Coast history, doesn't go back that far. But yeah, it was just a succession, right? And then for a while, the Missouri and the Mississippi and then the Missouri were the borders of just kind of like, we don't really go much past there because there's not a lot of bridges or transportation or whatever. Like that was kind of, I feel like that was a bit of a wall for a little while. And then it was just the wild past that. You know, when did Lewis and Clark didn't even go till, what was it, like 1905, 1805, 1806?
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
for a while, and a lot of that land. I mean, well, and what I'm thinking of is just that savagery. You know, these immigrants just having to suck it up, true American grit, go out there, be pioneers.
Yeah,
People are dying all the time.
totally.
Like,
A lot of graves on the Oregon Trail,
yeah,
right?
a lot of graves. And the ones that survived and made it out to this plot of land that they pray the
Right.
local tribe won't come down on them and kill them. And then there's these people that made it to Wallace, Idaho.
Yeah, so this is another interesting sort of component of Wallace. And Wallace, you got Wallace, Kellogg. Actually, the first, up in Pritchard and like Eagle City, actually, was where everything kind of first went down in the Silver Valley area. Even though that's not the Silver Valley, it's just like one valley north. It's like the North Fork of the Coeur d'Alene, cuts off past Kingston and Pritchard, actually right about Pritchard, and that's just Pritchard Creek. And that's where Andrew Pritchard went up, and he's got, like, all these characters are super interesting, right? And he goes up, and he was kind of this communist of sorts. And he had all these, like, communist brethren. He was trying to keep it secret. And was like, hey, don't tell anybody. We're gonna set this aside for our brethren, right? Don't tell anybody, get up here. Of course, it spreads like wildfire, and there's a gold rush. And Pritchard ends up getting kind of pushed out, dies pretty poor and lonely. But he's largely credited as being kind of the first guy. He's goofing around up there, actually in the Silver Valley, not far from Kellogg, at a place called Evolution. He kind of staked it as Evolution. The Mission, which is still the oldest building in Idaho, super cool building if you've ever been there, was there. And then there were a couple of just old shacks that, like John Mullen and from the Mullen Road had built while they were building that road. And the whole purpose of the Mullen Road, which I think most people don't know, was to connect the Missouri River with the Columbia, thereby connecting the Pacific with the Gulf of Mexico, or now Gulf of America, or whatever you want to call it, so that they would have these trade routes, right? So it was basically Fort Benton, Montana, which is basically the navigable headwaters of the Missouri River, and Walla Walla, Washington, which was pretty much the navigable headwaters of the Columbia. And that was their way to, I think that way they could, if they could go overland, have an overland wagon road, they could ship more goods cross country, more effectively, more efficiently. But that road became, and it got used for a little while. The Civil War then kind of kicked in, and it just slowed down. You know, that Mullen Road was built in 1950s or 1850s, and it's pretty impressive, actually. You consider the terrain that they went over, and it's 600 miles long, and he and a company of 200 men, built that in a year.
Good for him.
with,
Damn.
you think of the equipment that they had to do
a
that.
lot of
It's largely shovels, right?
Yeah.
And horses and whatever else. I do have the book on that. I need to dig into it. But it's large. I had to kind of just narrow my focus on, because the story of that I'm working on is just so. I'm literally, like, last count. I stacked the books that I've read basically up to my chest, and this is, mind you, while you're taking notes and trying to figure everything out. It's pretty intense, but the story is just so crazy and dynamic. Like, so the way that I want to tell it, I think I should preface with this, is I describe it as a documentary that you don't know that you're watching a documentary. It's basically a Western, a drama. There's no, there could be narration. I'm kind of not leaning that way.
Kind of like Hatfield and McCoy's.
Well, just it would be as accurate as a documentary, but it'd be a Western. So kind of like, and I think it'd be cool to not market it as a true story. I think it'd be really rad to just kind of find out. Oh, and by the way, that was all true. Because I think you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, well, like, the true story is just as crazy as anything.
Well, yeah, no, exactly.
Reality's
like,
stranger than fiction.
Truth is stranger than fiction, and there's on this one there's no call for elaboration. Like, it's totally unnecessary. There's just so much there, and so when I talk about an arc, it's really just, there's a lot of episodics where you have just parallel arcs from beginning to end. There's not really necessarily a beginning to end in the episodic form, right? That carries multiple seasons. This lends itself to more of that. Now you've got that Day family and their, like, cohort. They're central casting because they're like the connective tissue that somehow, fortunately for me, happened to connect, like, all the major events that happened there. And you have the mining wars, which were just explosive and huge. The murder, the mayhem, the prostitution. I mean, it's got all of the classic components, but at a really high level. And what happened there had really large implications for labor organizations. Actually, the Western Federation of Miners, which became, for a while, off the top of my head, I can't remember what it became right now, but it became the largest labor organization in the Western United States. Started there. And there were trials. There was this guy named Harry Orchard that was a early stakeholder in the Hercules mine with the Day family, with the Paulsons, with the Huttons. These are all names you see, like, around here. All interesting characters. It was super rags to riches story. And they're fighting, like, the Guggenheims and the Rockefellers, all this adversity. And they end up basically taking over the whole valley and just running the show. And I mean, you're talking about a huge district of, dozens and dozens of giant mines. And they're from their little Hercules mine, which became the richest silver vein in the world at the time. And these were just a bunch of guys. They were being laughed at. Store clerks and May Hutton, who's, in her own right, very interesting woman, kind of a unsinkable Molly Brown type, very flamboyant. Just a couple books written about her. You've got the Hutton Settlement and Hutton Elementary and Hutton Buildings. You see these things, like, around town that are left, these remnants. Finch and Patsy Clark and Amasa Campbell, right? Like the Campbell House and Finch Arboretum. And so schools and streets and mansions and parks and all these things that are the names around town, it all came from the Silver Valley. Like, this is what established Spokane to be what it is. It's why we became the railroad hub of basically the inland Pacific Northwest. And it's why we have all the great old architecture here that's kind of surprising. Yeah, it's hard. I'm kind of losing my train of thought.
Sounds like you should name it the Epic of Silver Valley.
Yeah, well,
you got a lot of moving parts here. So it's a American rags to riches story where these settlers come out here. They find some an actual mine. I'm assuming the Hercules mine is one that they actually dug into.
It is.
It wasn't one of those ones where they like wash out everything.
No, that's placer mining. So yeah,
Yeah.
this is hard rock underground mining, where they're caving in, like just tunneling into the hillside. Those hills are in there. They're like Swiss cheese now.
So talk about the mining wars. How was that?
That was pretty crazy. I mean, that becomes very, very central. I mean, that's kind of the biggest event that
Who
happened.
fired the first
there were
shot?
two of them. God, it's who fired the first shot? It happened. So there's two different mining wars. There was an 1892 and an 1899. They're both interesting in their own right. So there's this really good book called A Cowboy Detective by this guy named Charlie Siringo, who happened to be all part of it. So he was a Pinkerton detective sent in, and he's got his own. He's written or had written like 3 different books. Started off with the little books they'd sell on the train. But he became this Pinkerton detective, working largely out, on the plains. Was running around chasing the Hole in the Wall gang and Butch Cassidy and Billy the Kid. He was there with the guy Pat, whatever his name, that shot him. Anyway, I had to kind of.
So this
Really
famous
focused
detective comes in.
He
to
comes in.
investigate
He's
a
kind of
mining war.
he's largely sort of credited, if you will, for basically tipping the scales and causing everything to blow up. So they blow up this mine called the Frisco up in Burke Canyon. And that's really what sets everything off for that. And so then they declare martial law, and they just shut the whole valley down. They put 600 miners. They just round up basically every Union miner and put them in.
Military?
The military comes
Yeah.
in. And this is the other interesting part. It's not just like your basic military, right? The Guard's off fighting the Spanish-American War, so they send in the Buffalo Soldiers. So
Oh shit! They probably got no respect.
no, not at all. Well, actually, I mean, there were enough of them.
Mm-hmm.
They overwhelmed the local force of miners, but the miners were getting pretty. I mean, there was a lot of shootouts. A lot of people were dying.
Oh yeah, I bet that just emboldened them.
Oh, big time. Yeah, and I think they felt like they had a lot of support.
That'd be a hell of a good
Boise.
gunfight to watch.
Oh, for sure.
Wow.
So it got crazy. Like there was a shootout at the Frisco mine, and ultimately this other guy. I mean, every one of these people, out of the number of people that became somehow famous or high up in government out of these little, mining towns, is just absurd, right? Because you just don't expect like that kind of people to be there. But I think at last count, just the amount of people that have Wikipedia pages today is over 50 out of this little valley. So yeah, it gets crazy. Levi Hutton's driven at gunpoint to drive a train into the Bunker Hill to blow it up, just full of dynamite.
That's cool.
Yeah, super crazy. There's this guy, Harry Orchard, who was, again, multiple books on this subject. This kind of crazy dude. He ended up at least claiming to have killed 72 people. He blew up a whole train station. He assassinated the governor of Idaho. And it looks like, so they were acquitted, but it looks like it was the main 3 top dogs at the Western Federation of Miners that hired him to go out and, kill these, what they call a scab, right? A non-union miner, or these other leaders. They tried to kill some of the mine owners, ultimately kill this Frank Steunenberg, blow him up in front of his house down in Caldwell, Idaho, which is not far from Boise. Just basically as this revenge for issuing the command to have martial law placed upon the valley. And they took 600 miners and they put them in what they basically called a bullpen. And they held them there for like 5-6 months. So there was a lot. I mean, if you go into Wallace today, none of those people are still alive, but it's a very sensitive topic still, and it all resonates. I think it's why you think of northern Idaho as being very, conservative, and the bulk of it is. But Wallace is a very liberal town, and I think it's because of the unions, because the union is a very democratic idea or institution, and that's just resonated till today.
Well, what is Wallace
And
now?
it's really cool. Wallace now, I mean, there's very little mining with a spike in silver.
They actually have mining still?
They're still mining. I mean,
good for them.
they just keep going deeper. They basically, I mean, a lot of the majority of the mines just fizzled out, right? They got down, the ore just ran out. But they've got, I think this is it, the Sunshine Mine, not the Sunshine, the one over in Mullen, Lucky Friday, goes down 9,000 feet.
That's really deep.
Yeah, it's crazy deep. So basically, they got to the point where it's just too hot. The deeper you go, the hotter it gets. But with the price of silver, I mean, they're still working it. They figure out how to do it. I don't know a lot about all that. I pick up the information where I can. I'd really love to get a tour in one of those mines. But yeah, with robotics and the price of silver, look, there's a lot of talk about several of the mines being opened back up over there.
Yeah,
Because
especially
if you
the price of
automate it,
silver.
you can go down to where it's 160 degrees, and you're not going to faint or dehydrate or any of that.
It would seem like robotic mining would be the way to go for that sort of stuff, considering.
I'm guessing that's the future of mining. The unions have been fighting it, from what I understand, quite a bit. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
So there was a miners' war.
There were two
minor wars that
Yeah.
I didn't even know ever existed, because why would they ever teach that in Washington state history, because it's Idaho state, but it's cool.
Yeah, so I've gotten really embedded, actually, with a lot of the historians over there, and they're just a wealth of knowledge.
So it's literally like a Hatfield and McCoy thing, but
you're
between
gonna have
two
to-
mining companies.
No, it was basically between the mine owners and the mine worker, the union
labor
miners.
war.
Yeah. So they were getting kind of screwed. I mean, what I like about it is it's this interesting story. It's not super obvious. There were some mine owners that were just pretty fucked up what they were doing, and there was a manipulation and the labor. I mean, you consider the risks. Being a miner then kind of sucked. Relatively high paying job, but pretty terrible quality of life, working conditions, and pretty short lifespan. But then you have the mine owners who are trying to profit. It's interesting. I mean, there's kind of the extremes on both sides. So I think it's kind of a really good parallel to just the current political environment. You've got the extremists, which really ultimately caused this thing to blow up, and the problem. You got pretty decent mine owners. You've got really bad mine owners that are just abusive and kind of fuck you, and feels kind of like slave labor. And it was really cool is the Daves seem to be just like the neutral guys that nobody has a problem with. So it's a really good story. I don't know if I'm not articulating it that well right now. It's a lot of the problem for me is that there's so much and it's so complex. I'm still sort of like the structure's there, but just still trying to make it like a little bit verbally digestible, which I haven't really focused on because, don't really want to share the story too much until
I feel you.
ready to really share the story, right? To release it, sell a ticket.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I mine through water heater permits. I gotta
Right.
it takes me forever to actually write the article. 'Cause
Right.
I-
But you can wrap your head around it. You know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But also there's so much going on. You can't really fit it into a box or to explain it to somebody. It's sort of this, it's a journey. It's a visual journey, and it doesn't fit neatly into one explanation. But going back to what I was kind of touching on there, I like that there's not like an obvious good guy and bad guy. I mean, there is and there isn't, but really from both sides. And I feel like, I guess, it also, one of the things I feel like we need more now than anything is just more unity and being able to understand each other. So to have something that just, provokes people's minds, makes them think a little bit outside of what they would normally think. And I also don't like when you see a film and you just feel like you're guided. Like, this is what you're supposed to think.
Yeah.
I'd like to leave that a little bit open-ended.
Here's what you're supposed to think, and here's our political spin, too.
Yeah.
Here's that element, just a force.
Well, I guess that kind of one and the same is what I'm getting at. Let people decide for themselves a little bit instead of, putting that twist on it. It'd be easy to do. It'd be a lot easier to do for the labor side. Those are the guys you really feel for.
So far, what you're saying is Wallace was a town, and I'm sure the origin story is interesting.
Yeah, so actually...
And I like starting off from the mining war first. I think, if anything, I would like to hear it from the mining war, and then there is pre-mining war, then post, or however you want to tell it,
Yeah, so what I've kind of decided to do is just really focus on the Day family because they're so central, and they just let this kind of happen around them. They're engaged in it. It affects them. They affect it. And they have front row seats, right? And them and their partners, because the mining wars aren't the only thing. There's a bunch going on, right? And this is why episodic format is really what makes sense. I'd like to just kind of capture why the valley became what it became and what it was then. And I really like the idea of starting with almost like a cold open. Like, the closest thing I could think of like a Game of Thrones type thing where you come in and you see you start out, but it's just like photorealistic. To use, CGI and like totally map that area out and erase it back to like virgin forest, right? And then with each episode, you just see it grow. Like, at first, it's just the forest. Then you see the things start to pop up until it becomes, the interesting thing about Wallace is it was like, in its own right, this like extremely wealthy, almost metropolitan little dot in the middle of nowhere. And it was like the final frontier. It really was like the final frontier of the lower 48 because there was really no reason to go there, and it was so just inaccessible. Like, it was just not easy to get through there. It's just so steep and thick with vegetation. It sounds like there's some debate about like whether the tribes even spent much time there. It sounds like John Mullen, when he came through with his road, he was following effectively one of their seasonal tribal, pathways or roads or trails. Just because that was the intuitive way to go. That's what made sense. Following largely the valley floor, and then going through the passes. But it's hard to say how inhabited it was. Nobody was really looking for signs of that, and a lot of it would have been erased. I don't think they've come across much. One of the problems is the Coeur d'Alene tribe was one of the most decimated when disease came through. But it kind of came through before the white man even got here. And it just wiped them out. So the story goes, so that basically just tells you that there just wasn't much tribe. So knowing whether or not they were inhabiting that area is kind of hard. They traveled,
There's not a lot of residual knowledge, whether it was tribal knowledge or, there's just not much knowledge of this area.
I probably need to dig deeper into it from that tribal perspective, but I assume that whoever was kind of reading the pieces that I read would have, consulted the tribes. So the story goes that they actually, because disease and everything hit so hard here, the Coeur d'Alene tribe actually sent, I'm not finding the word, but emissaries basically to go find these black robes that they'd heard about. They invited them. I don't know of any other tribe that did that. You hear kind of horror stories.
Yeah,
some
exactly.
Of
the absolute opposite.
Yeah.
Like the black robes come and it's just horrible.
Right.
Yeah.
So from what I understand and what I've read, it's just like the historians are a little baffled because they kind of lived in this pretty, the sense of harmony. They helped build the mission. They went down all the way they sent these emissaries all the way down to St. Louis to ask them to come up and start a mission. They called them the Black Robes. There's a really good book that I just read called Black Robe, and it's Father Desmet, who was the first one to come up. He didn't spend much time there, but he's the one that established the Cataldo mission, which is originally built
like
not
Desmet
there.
Hall in Gonzaga.
Absolutely, yeah. Pierre-Jean Desmet.
Yeah, Cataldo. Yeah.
And then Cataldo was later. There were 3 notable priests that were there. Cataldo wasn't the one that built it. Off the top of my head, I'm struggling a little bit. I largely decided to kind of operate outside. I needed to bring my focus in because there's just so much material in just basically from 1883 to about 1906. And that's a pretty long period of time. Plus, if you're trying to have actors that don't age out, because you gotta have that, flexibility to have somebody be 20 years old and also be 45 years old. So, yeah, I mean, there's a few. Those are also the types of logistics you start to consider that I never would have thought about until I really started to deep dive into this thing. And again, to a large extent, I don't know what I'm doing, but that's kind of what I've always done is just I figure it out, And this one is just it just feels like I'm supposed to be doing it. The amount of just happy coincidences are kind of absurd on this, the relations that I just happened to have that I didn't have any idea with, the fact, I won't even get into it here, but it'd be like a story for another time, and definitely kind of a deep rabbit trail or a long rabbit trail. So I feel pretty confident about it. The dialogue I'm struggling with, everything else feels really good.
So,
and I think, that's one of those things where I probably try and even just, basically I'm just putting out crappy dialogue so somebody can get the idea and engage some. I think the story warrants and could attract some actual writing talent.
Well, if you've ever bought in silver, and I encourage everyone to, especially now the price is going up. I don't think it's going to be going down. But, I don't know, whether it's $70 an ounce for silver, and you go to Coins Plus or wherever, and you go buy an ounce of silver, and you just hold it, and you look at it. Or just walk into Coins Plus, walk into there, and you hold the silver. And silver has its own frequency, right? It makes you feel good. Silver is self-sterilizing, so ancient sailors would put silver coins into clay jars and of water, and that would keep the water purified. And over time, that started catching on to people who lived inland, because they would hear that, hey, we heard that these ancient sailors put their silver in their jar in their water, and it keeps it purified. So maybe there's something going on with silver. There's a reason. It's a precious metal, and it's associated with all these things that, like purity and whatnot. And they're like, you know what? I think we should all take our silver coin, one person for everyone in the village, and we'll throw it into the well. And then there's like, what? That's stupid. That's just wishful thinking. That's really wishful. And that's how the term the wishing well came. And then other villages started hearing it. And they're like, what? They're throwing silver into the well and it's purifying the water? Yeah. And that's why they'll find a lot of silver deposits in ancient wells. So treasure hunters will go to ancient wells. And so if you just hold that silver in your hand and you're just like, dude, people killed other people for this shit. And that'll give you more inspiration too.
Yeah, I do think there's something to it. There's something to it's kind of like I kept coming to, there must be something in the water here. Because, like I said, the amount of people that just kind of go on to do crazy big things, even today, like very wealthy, intelligent people come out of that little town, or those little towns. It's a little series of towns. You've got Mullen, all in a row along the South Fork. Mullen, Osborne, Kellogg, and Wallace. But primarily Wallace. And I think because Wallace is kind of silver central. But then again, Kellogg had the Bunker Hill, which was the kind of the largest. That was the mother lode, the biggest of all the mines. That was also the most evil of the mine owners. So, yeah, oh man, there's so many good stories, and there's so much. It's just so dynamic as far as the environment and the set and the props that you could come up with. And the other thing I like, again, like I said, the final frontier, the different topography, and you also have that sort of, you've got this juxtaposition of being at the advent of basically the second industrial revolution with electricity coming online, and you know what I mean? It's like things are changing. This is like the first real technological shift that's occurring, and the things that have happened in the past, basically from then to now, just progressively more and more rapid development in technology, because technology besets technology kind of thing. It's like, who knows where we're going now? But I think there's something to the silver. Like it probably has some sort of property that affects people one way or another, other than just the like gold, the greed, and all that. I mean, like you say, I'm not like to get too crazy about it, but silver's rising, and why is it rising? Isn't it mostly because of its conductive properties?
Oh, there's a lot of reasons. Yeah, it's ductility, it's conductive. They need it for solar panels. They need it for server farms, and they're not mining any more of it, and it just seemed like it was just being shorted for so long that finally people are like, no. And plus there's a ratio too. There's a silver to gold ratio, and it is way below what it should be to that silver to gold. Some people think it should be around 1,000, but whatever. But yeah,
it's interesting, and looking back too, it's like, certain sort of values seem to trade parties.
It's a store of wealth.
Well, no, I mean,
Yeah.
getting away from silver for a second, because what I was thinking of is back at this time, one of the big issues, especially for like places like the Valley, were that they were going off the silver standard and onto the gold standard, and that affected the Valley. But that also was very, like, there were a lot of politics surrounding it, and the politics that were going on then, in a lot of ways, were very similar to what's going on now politically. And they had that's also, there was the rise and pretty quick fall of the populist party, but it was kind of like the left and the right were trading some values, right? Certain values that one side carried were adopted by the other and dropped, and vice versa. So there's just so much, to me, there's so much to read into it, and I don't want it to get too complicated, so that's like really one of the main pieces is how to make this digestible and entertaining, right? Because there's just so much like excess information that does help you put together the story, but that people don't want to know the story at that level. They just want to be entertained. But how do you get those sort of underlying sort of messages that I think are important? And go back to that idea of unity, I don't know. I get kind of hung up on it, but I feel like, United States of America, and we're kind of losing a little bit of that right now. So this would be a way to get people to sort of think about that and be really entertained at the same time. It's not the reason for doing it. It just kind of surfaced.
Well, it makes me think on it. It makes me interested. So you came across this essentially Book of Wallace, or an epic of
totally.
many books.
Yeah, and it was like this thing already had everything, just that one book. It's like you got the murder and the mayhem and the prostitution and rags to riches and these crazy, big fire that basically wiped out the whole entire North Panhandle, parts of Montana. They call it the Big Burn. And even Eastern Washington, 3 million acres, which had its own implications about why or it's at least postured that our national park system exists in large part due to that. And then, Teddy Roosevelt's involved. There's all these huge names that come through, and like just household names that are kind of fun. So the story really starts, like I said, up over the hill on Pritchard Creek, and Wyatt Earp and Calamity Jane are up there. Wyatt's fresh off of, not too long after Tombstone, he comes up with his other two brothers. And, like the White Elephant, that you know where that name comes from?
No.
So the Earp brothers, basically, they buy this big old tent from this guy, Dutch Jake, who was up there. With another one that I have like this odd tie to. And he was actually German, not Dutch. He was just when he would say Deutsch, which is basically means German. And I just started calling him Dutch Jake. This giant tent saloon that they ran up there. And the original name White Elephant comes from down in Fort Worth, Texas, from a friend of theirs. And they just kind of stole the name and then had this big dance hall saloon, this big white tent called the White Elephant. And that's where the White Elephant name comes from. There's actually a character in the movie 1883 when they're down in Fort Worth, Texas, played by, what's his name? Billy Bob Thornton. He plays this pretty badass, short-lived scene, but kind of a cameo. Basically,
I remember.
Sheriff. Yeah, he goes in.
He goes in and just shoots everyone.
Well, that was in the White Elephant Saloon.
No shit.
Yeah, the original one. Yeah, so they came up, duplicated it, and because evidently they were buddies with that guy down there, and they weren't here for long because they were claim jumping, got taken to court, and then basically were like, well, there's nothing left for us here. They had this shootout in town. Well, actually, they didn't shoot. He was the sheriff of Kootenai County, but in Shoshone County, but they didn't know. They thought it was Kootenai County. So that kind of happened at the same time. It was like, okay, well, we kind of missed out on the claims. We're being taken to court for claim jumping. I just lost my job as sheriff because we're not even in that county.
And jurisdiction is huge.
Yeah, but they hadn't really, the lines weren't very clear back then. So, yeah, Eagle City was a crazy, crazy town. So what I've decided to do, actually, is I'm going to break that piece off because it was too long. It didn't really fit into the episodic story. So since I'm super green, right, and I don't want this giant project to be the very first thing I do, break off that little piece and make basically just a proof of concept. Probably not even a full feature, like a short film that covers that. But it's the story up there. It's just Molly B. Dam and, yeah, ton of characters. And that's kind of sets off the whole thing before they even discover the silver. It's all the gold up in just over the hill.
Huh.
And there's, yeah, it's a pretty, it lends itself to a pretty good scene for a story. And again, truth is stranger than fiction. You don't need to make it up.
Yeah, no shit. Especially when you tell me that, where the sheriff walks in and just shoots everyone. Because I thought that was just, it's crazy because they could do that.
Right.
And like a judge would just be like, hang him, no trial. Like,
totally.
All these things we take for granted. And how wild, man. Like straight cowboy shit. Like, yeah, I'll just walk into a bar and just shoot a bunch of people aimlessly and not worry about the trajectory of my round hitting other people in the crowd and stuff. Like,
well, it was literally the Wild West. Mm-hmm. I mean, like you talk about characters. I even had to narrow my characters down because there's just so many good characters out there. But there's this judge up in Murray, which is like right next to Eagle City, and Judge Buck. Even the name is fun, and like they just talk. He would drink tequila while he was holding court, and they'd shoot their guns off to celebrate a verdict in the courtroom, just up into the ceiling.
Hold on a second. The camera overheated, so it goes flat.
So just all these things.
Keep talking. Let me kill the lights. Bam.
Sure.
Makes it better. I always like it better when the camera's off. It makes the podcast really interesting because it's like there's no camera.
But there's so much up there that's absurd, and there's so much going on. There's people there that are kind of proper. There's the people there that are the other end of the spectrum. And this big gold rush happens in the middle of the winter. So they're coming up over these mountains into this tiny little canyon, in 4 or 5 feet of snow, either hiking or on the mule train or in a horse or on a horse. And it's just, that to me is also just kind of interesting for a Western. It all happens in the snow. And like when the snow melts by spring, like all the claims have been claimed. Somehow people just went out there and claimed it during 4 feet of snow or more in the winter. And when the snow melts, there's something like 26 bodies just around the camp that they just find, either murdered or whatever happened. Maybe got drunk and fell in the snow and just froze to death.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. But so the idea is, the real art of this one is just be how to pull this all together, make it flow well, create, and then not flow well, like get those little hiccups where they should be. It's got the adversity, it's got everything. So
Sounds like I would start with a YouTube channel, man.
yeah, I don't know, we'll see. I'm talking to a couple of different camera crews right now that are super interested, want to jump in and just do like a low budget something on this. And I think we can make it look pretty good, especially if it's a short.
Yeah, I was thinking like if you just went out to these locations with your camera and you're just like, hey, I'm here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I was originally thinking I got to do something. So I was like, yeah, I'll just take my phone camera or a few phone cameras out with, some of the crew from studio and just go see what we can put together. And it doesn't even have to be there. But I think we could do something a little higher level to get this thing really moving.
Have you heard of the Spokane Storytime guy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, on Facebook.
Yeah,
That's what
totally.
I was kind of thinking, like you could start out, and I've watched how he's progressed too. Because
Could do that, but part of it is also I kind of like nobody else seems to really know about it yet, and I'd like keep it that way until I can put something out there.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean? Just from an IP perspective.
I feel ya.
So maybe I just bled too much of it right now, but it's exciting.
Yeah, I just think like bits
And there's
pieces.
so much more. There's so much more componentry, and you can't go AI farm this information. It's just it's not online. You have to literally go through all these old books if you want to, stay at all accurate. But
Okay, so that's a good thing. So how old are these books?
well, like I said, probably the bulk of them that are from like the 50s to the 70s.
Are they in
50s,
public
60s,
domain?
70s. I mean, some of them are. They're really hard to find. I've kind of spent about 3 years amassing this, a collection I'm pretty proud of. They're hard to find.
Huh.
You have to go through the used bookstores and and look online, but they're really hard to find. And again, you run into some conflicting histories, so you don't necessarily know. Some people want to romanticize it a little more. Or they just get different information for whatever reason. So in those scenarios, I guess it gives you opportunity for a little bit of liberty to let things flow. What's going to work with the rest of the story best. So, but the rule for me is just, if I know it to be true, don't change it, and I'm trying to find every piece of information that I can. And like I said, I got pretty embedded with a few of these historians over in the Valley, and they love to share their history, and they're really knowledgeable. They're really proud of it. It's their story. And a lot of them are from there, 5th generation, some of them. So their lines go straight back. And that's the other thing is there's several things I think about, but one of them is just, I want to tell a story that just really respects that area. I mean, that's definitely a paramount sort of guardrail for me, and I think it's an easy one to stick to. Not necessarily easy, actually. If I don't recommend trying to do something an episodic and a historically accurate one at that as your first project.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see why people deviate from history on dramas, and it's just more of a based on true events kind of thing. But I think it can be done, and I think I've managed to weave it together pretty well. I really like where it's at. It's just I got to get this dialogue tightened up. Right now, I honestly kind of hate my dialogue. I'm not going to be the guy that does the dialogue. I'd like to be like, definitely set the tone for it in a way. Just like this is the trajectory, this is the flavor we're going for. But I need some help. A good writer, man, that's a rare talent.
Yeah, dialogue between characters is tough. It is, and it's tough with improv too. 'Cause you got to improv shit. Like sometimes it's easier improving.
Well, and that's again, the dialogue is largely just that you don't know what happened and that interpersonal. But I have spent a lot of time looking at like these main characters, their personal letters, gone down to the archives, U of I. I still need to get down to Boise to Idaho State history. But it's just really at least trying to stay true to like who these people are. So, I've got all these character developments, the wall, all the strings running through to remind me how everything's connected. So it's a deep dive. Like I'm kind of, a certain part of me is living in that world. And I can see it. I can see it in my head. So yeah, I mean, it's there. Just got to piece it together. Plus, it's like literally, it could be 10 seasons worth, honestly. But putting that all together beforehand, which you kind of got to do on something that you're not making it up as you go, is the real challenge. And I don't necessarily know how to do that. That's something I need help with. Well, the structure is largely that, but also knowing exactly how much time you're going to take on each event, and then counting up those events. I mean, there's a lot of math to do too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
have you done a trip recently to like some sort of inspirational trip to Wallace and then
I've done
down Mullen Road or?
Oh yeah, no man, I've spurlunked all over that place, and I've met some great people that are locals there. That showed me around this. One made great friends with this gal named Heather Brandstetter, and she wrote this book called Selling Sex in the Silver Valley. Really good book. And it's just basically the prostitution history that went down over there. And she's like, super smart. Book's really well written. If you're interested in this history at all, highly recommend. She's taking me around, and there's this other guy, Bruce, who's actually related to the Day family. And he's taking me around, and he's I don't know, he's almost like the unofficial mayor over there, I feel like, and just introduced me to everybody. And so I get to go into the museum and just kind of go back in their archives and search through things. And but yeah, I've learned a surprising amount about that town. It's a very welcoming town, I think. Well, I think Heather put it good, pretty succinctly. She's like, you're either from Wallace or you're sponsored by somebody from Wallace. And so I guess that was her way of telling me that I'm sponsored by somebody from Wallace.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah.
That's good, because that's way up
No, but
there.
it's interesting you bring that up, though, because so this weekend is the Idaho Panhandle Film Festival in Wallace. They're trying to get that off the ground over there. And I think it's interesting, it's kind of a thing in like these mountain town film festivals, and I think Wallace could make a lot of sense for it. It's not close to any airports, so there's that challenge, but it's between two ski resorts, and that town is so highly programmed. Like, they have something going on. The amount of festivals and events that town puts on for the size of town that it is insane. But yeah, so a film that a short film that I was in that Bill Bancroft did with a couple other people that I know. Actually, mostly people that I know from Spokane, really some of the best, crew and production and actors around. He's going to show. And then So I understand that they're showing Train Dreams, and there's supposed to be some people from Train Dreams coming, but I don't know who yet. So that's going to be super fun. So it's like, go see a couple of films that I'm in. And that room's actually just won on Easter weekend. It won the best short film for the West Coast Film Awards.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's going to be super fun in the town where I'm working on a film, producing a film about the town. I get to go to this film festival in the town and see 2 films that I'm in. So
That's awesome.
I expect it to be a pretty
jumped into
fun
the
weekend.
world of acting.
Yeah, man.
From being an architect to learning about Wallace to being bored and during COVID and saying, I want to be an actor. I think I can do it.
Yeah, I didn't think I could do it. I just was like, I'm just going to go check this out. I think I was more of a tourist. And then it just kind of hit. I got the bug.
Good.
It's been fun. And I think in large part we have a great film community here.
We do. I agree.
Yeah.
And they're very accepting. What's interesting is when I show up, because I went to one of the few events you were there, and I brought the puppet data mole, and I was going around talking to people with the puppet, and what I found was interesting was that the actors and actresses had no problem playing along with the puppet, but the off-screen people did not want it. They're like, I don't talk to puppets.
Yeah, I mean, it's playing, right? And that's what we do as actors. We play.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely in line with the actor's
Yeah.
personality.
Yeah, it's just an interesting thing. And what I like about Spokane, I've had a lot of unique individuals from the film community on the podcast, and they say the same thing of how supportive Spokane is. It would be really cool if there was some sort of a, the last one was the Z Nation, if there's some sort of like a Z Nation,
Like an ongoing episodic
major
yeah.
production.
Well, and I think Spokane owes a lot of its film community and talent to that being here for 5 years. It just kind of got built up. People came. I think talent came from out of the area, stayed. People in the area had something to work on. So now, as a result of that, there's a lot of very talented cast and a lot of very talented crew. And people that are interested in production. So it's,
And
I think what
shooting
we need,
locations.
it's kind of one of those things where, and shooting locations. I mean, you look at just Eastern Washington in general, the geographical diversity is massive. You got everything from basically desert to, small little pockets of what almost pass for inland rainforest, actually, that technically are considered that. Mountains, prairies, high vegetation, low vegetation. I mean, it's all here. Lakes and rivers. And I think Washington Filmworks is doing, really taking that by the tail and promoting the hell out of it. And I think with the film credits, we should start to see more here. You've got, rich people like Rich Cowan and North by Northwest that have a facility, like Studio A out at Airway Heights. So I think it's one of those things where if we don't maintain the momentum, then I think we're at risk of, people are just going to have to leave. They want to keep doing it. And then we don't have that, either the infrastructure or the talent or, all of these sort of resources that we currently have. We need to keep it going. And I think, people are getting sick of the LA thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason why you can't do it up here. You can do it a lot cheaper. There was a lot of discussion about, I think it's probably fizzled out about 2 or 3 years ago, but building a couple of large, legit sound stages out at the Spokane International Airport, so they could fly talent in. Got however many direct flights a day to LA, and it's just so cheap to film up here compared to, LA having to do sound stages down there. Everything's got to be ridiculously expensive compared to coming up here, and it's all here. It's all real. And your background's all up here, and that's what background's looking for, right? Is just people that look real or interesting. That I think our local background company is called Flannel, I think probably for a reason. Just that's the texture that they're looking for in a lot of this background stuff. So yeah, it's really cool. There's a lot of talent here, and it's a great community, and it's a very welcoming, I think, comfortable community. I think that was a big part of me kind of really getting into this acting thing more than I thought. Was it just went in? It was like a safe space. When I went to that first class, being like, pretty shy, probably knees together, shoulders kind of tucked in. Halfway through it, I was like, I want to jump in. I want to jump into that scene right now. Because it's it's a safe space. You just feel comfortable. You feel everything kind of just melts around you, and you're just in it, in the moment. And it's just kind of, and I think that a lot of that is just the dojo, and it's just the atmosphere that Coach provides. Mm-hmm. And it's very, and I've seen people come through there that like, all kind of the same. Like you can tell, like they have a glow up, over a series of months. They're a totally different person. It's really cool.
That's the fun of it. It's a cool transformational thing. Going and doing improv and acting and even putting on a puppet. When I meet somebody and I'm like, here, put on a puppet and use the puppet. And at first they don't get it. Some people can get into it just great. But it is transformational. And after they do it once with a puppet, they're like, oh man, this is simple. And or get on stage and say your lines. It's cool. But it makes me wonder, where do you think the future of film is going? And I can make some more tea too. I was going to boil some.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I'd hazard to even try and answer that. You have so many moving components, moving pieces right now. You have, obviously, AI and the digital era has already changed things. I think for one thing's for certain, the amount of material is just going to keep increasing that's available for streaming and your viewing pleasure. But I think it's going to change, just inevitably going to change. Just like anything, it's always changing, right? I mean, you had the silent films, and then you had the talkies, and then you had color, and then you had VHS, and then you had DVD, and I think just when film became digital, when they were able to start digitally producing films at the same quality as film, it just made production so much cheaper and faster and efficient that I think that's when material just started to really expand. Like just so much more started to be produced. And I think that's just been accelerating for a while. And then CGI, green screens, all these things, that just make it faster, cheaper, higher quality again and again and again. So more material for sure, but what you're looking at, it's a different thing than you were looking at in the 80s, right? And then you also have, to some degree, there's like an advancement because we can learn from what came before us. So there's always that level of advancement. It's just the same as like the technology begets technology. Well, same with knowledge, and just advancing. What works, what doesn't work. I think it's not linear, right? We don't always go necessarily in the positive direction, but the kinks get worked out along the way.
Well, how often do you watch movies?
Me? That's a good question. I probably watch 2 movies a week.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Where are you watching them?
I watch them at home.
No, like what platform?
I always do about 2 platforms at a time. So generally rotate between like Netflix and Paramount. YouTube actually has a fair number of movies on it. Don't really watch much on Amazon anymore unless it's something I can't find anywhere else and you rent it, just because I hate commercials. It just, yeah, it takes me out of the zone, right? Like I'm focused. Maybe I've got a little bit of ADD, so I need to keep that focus locked. Otherwise, I lose it a little bit, and especially when I'm studying. Like, so I've been, like I said, watching a lot of westerns because I'm studying them. I'm not trying to copy anything, but I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel either. So what works, what doesn't work, and then you take, your own version of that. Yeah, I'd say probably 2 a week.
So you're generally watching movies to study them. You're not.
Well, no, not entirely. I think if you're doing that strictly studying them, something's lost. Like you're not experiencing it like you should be. So it's trying to maintain that balance, which I think is hard. But it becomes something else. So once you get into, at least for me, and I think it's true for most people, once you get in sort of behind the scenes, you'll never see film the same way again, right?
Yeah.
Because it's different. I don't know if I would say better or worse, just totally different.
Yeah, I wonder where it's going to go, where long-form movies are going to go. I feel that they'll always have a place, but I wonder because the attention span and the attention economy we live in and the things I watch, I ask this question to people all the time. I'm obsessed with this question. Like, what are you watching on YouTube? How long are the videos are you watching? Because I'm trying to figure out, like, what is that optimal time
Right.
that somebody wants to watch something. And you brought up something, YouTube, right?
Yeah.
You're watching movies on YouTube.
I love YouTube, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's also probably part of what's driving this sort of edutainment angle that I'm taking on this. Number one, because it lends itself to that, but that's probably why I got so stuck on YouTube is you can learn while you're watching, while you're being entertained. And you can also get really specific to exactly what you're interested in based on your mood or whatever you're interested in, at that particular season of your life. I like entertainment that educates. I think that's really important. I think there's maybe not enough of that. At least in the like what you would call your traditional films. And then to get to your point about the attention span, I think people do like long form, but I think they like definable stopping points. I think that's why the episodic has become so popular. And the episodics make sense for a lot of reasons. Like
The series.
you can kind of go and spend some money on a set because you get to keep using it, right? And wardrobe and all those things, props. Just it's not the value that you get out because you can use it for scene after scene after scene and episode after episode after episode. As long as it's not just you're not just getting tired of it, right? You want those scenes to feel different, but you can reuse that stuff. But I think the episodic format's really popular. I couldn't say definitively exactly why, but there's the attention span side where people are a little short attention span, but then there's also the binge side, which are kind of coexisting at the same time right now.
So you're not going to make a cult-like following if you don't have an episodic series. You have to have that.
Anymore, yeah.
Well, you have to have that Tolkien-esque epic. It has
Right.
to, for people, not only just for fans watching it, but fandom afterwards.
Totally.
Those inside jokes for memes that, only the fans would get.
Yeah, I think taking it like you want to take the viewer on a journey, right? That's what the epic is, and Tolkien-esque is perfect. And I think a lot of these reference points, and I kind of start to break things down into the components when I'm studying. Like, okay, episodic, like what type is it? Does it have multiple things, like multiple storylines going? Does it have does it have like a definable beginning to end? What happens in the end? Tolkien definitely did. I don't know if mine does. You know, it's the rags to riches story, but it's really more just a story. So for me, Wallace is a main character. It's like this, the town is a main character, but it's not just Wallace, right? It's Mullen, it's Eagle City, which isn't even there anymore. It's like Murray, Osborne played a part, Kellogg played a part. So it's really the whole valley, and I'd like to expand like to Spokane and Coeur d'Alene and Missoula. And Butte, Montana, because there was a lot of things, you know, people passing back and forth. The politics were intertwined, the mines were intertwined, the labor force was intertwined with Butte. There was a lot of parallels going on. They were kind of popping off at the same time. Butte was copper, you know, they had some silver, but they were byproducts. They weren't what they were really going after. Whereas Silver Valley was silver, lead, and zinc. And that's also interesting because, like, the war has really affected what was going on there. And you weren't sent off to war if you were a miner because they needed lead, because they needed bullets. So it become really high demand during World War I. Was a huge boost for the valley. And it was one of the few places where all the men didn't leave, you know, that were of military age, because they needed them to mine the lead to make the bullets. And zinc had its own place, and then
So that would definitely increase the mine
yeah,
workers.
yeah, demand went up, profits went up. It was the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many. I mean, and really, this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. But I don't want to get into it too deep. You know, I don't want to let this out there.
Yeah. Well, it made me think about. Well, I read this book on the census, on the U.S. Census. Really interesting. A lot you can say on that, but it talked about how at one point in time, before big Hollywood came, there was, they called them neighborhood actors. Yeah, okay, go ahead. And these neighborhood actors, they would act locally because there was no big film distribution or anything like that going on. So these people would act locally, and that's sort of what's going on today. When we look at social media, we have neighborhood actors. We have these individuals who have their own following, and their own neighborhood is now digital. So it seems to me when it comes to filmmaking, the biggest issue is distribution. It's distribution, because where old school Hollywood, you were reliant on a film studio taking your film, producing everything for you. Now it's like the individual is their own studio, and the amount of distribution they get is based on how good they are at several factors, whether it's storytelling, editing, SEO, or search engine optimization, to the thumbnail creation, to title creation, to there's so much that goes into it that the big studio has died. And I've noticed that I see all these studios. I mean, God bless them for hosting events and stuff and being there, but it's like the green screen killed the studio. And the ability for kids video edit. Anyone can video edit. It's not a hard thing to do. And
Yeah, to be a one-man production company right now.
One-man show.
I mean, it's the same technology that allows for that is exactly why the industry is changing. And again, I'm no expert. I'm not really a student of what's going on with the changes in the industry. I am to a degree. I'm trying to think, okay, how can this new technology actually... I think telling the story that I want to tell right now is only, in the way that I want to tell it, at the scale that I want to tell it, is only feasible because of the technology that's available now. Mm-hmm. You could not have done it before.
Yeah, I wouldn't be half.
You couldn't have done it if you were like Warner Brothers. Like, you just couldn't. So that's where I think we're heading. I mean, I mean, the other sort of elephant in the room there is AI, right? I'm not a big fan of AI in film. I'm a big fan of CGI. AI, I would like to really utilize in just organizing, getting everything put together, for more of a, just an assistant type of functionality. But I don't want AI actors. I don't want AI writing. I don't want AI to develop the scripts. I do believe that the art is important. Once that happens, it's just not art anymore. I think, for me, like, human has to be part of the definition of art. Just that word has to be in there.
That's interesting. And that's a good topic for, AI and data mining, Mike. And data mining is like what constitutes the human. So you notice recently we had Donald Trump. I don't know if you have been following it, but he came out with a meme where it's like basically him being Jesus. Yeah. But he said, "Oh, I'm a doctor."
Yeah, to me, I'm just like, I don't even want to touch it.
So the question that I saw somebody ask, what did he prompt?
Well, evidently it didn't come from him. He reposted somebody else's.
From
what I understand. And it's just like, oh, come on. I don't know.
But I believe he made it, and I believe that he prompted it like that.
I'll say this. It wasn't a very smart move.
Yeah, but... Yeah, it seemed to kind of backfire with the Christians. Christian base.
And then you get the left side that's going to just take anything. But this is why I'm just... Unity, man. Mm-hmm. I'm all about the unity. Let's just stop yelling at each other. And the amount of... I feel like... I don't really have any strong opinions about the left or the right. It's the far left and the far right that really only exist to fight each other. That's like all they exist for in my mind.
Oh, yeah. No, what I mean is like specifically the way he prompted it. So like when people talk about AI and not being like a form of an art form, some could argue that your prompt, and that's why there's this whole field called prompt engineering.
Oh, sure.
Is an art in and of itself to get this machine to produce something. But I feel I mean, I wouldn't like AI actors. However, I recently came onto this YouTube channel where this guy is just retelling he's telling the story of the conquistadors and the Spanish when they first came to Mexico and South America and Cortez. And he's using all AI generated everything.
I recently came across something similar. And It was like, what was it about? It was like, they were just like, suppose what the next World War would look like. And they were just running through these scenarios and all AI actors, everything. And, I mean, right now it still looks kind of terrible, like a video game or something, but it's going to get there. And I think the industry, the art, is facing something that it's never faced anything at this scale before. I don't think color or sound or anything since the advent of film itself, the moving picture, will affect film as much as this does. And it'll be interesting to say. I mean, it'll come down to what is the actual appreciation for the art. It's going to have a different feel. And there's going to be a lot of people that are just, it's not going to make any difference to, right? Probably the majority of people. And that's what sells, but I don't know. I don't want to watch those. I don't want that to be, 90% of what's available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's some that I like.
Yeah.
I mean, like, sure. I like the Conquistador ones because of that AI generated art showing so it looked like it was cinema, but kind of animated,
Kinda doughy.
like it's because of animation. I like animation.
Sure.
At the end of the day, to me, it's a form of animation.
I don't know.
But
I feel like I just feel like it's not art, and I don't want to be like sound like a stick in the mud or like oh art and whatever. But yeah, it's important. I feel like it's really important, and we're gonna lose something. It's just how much of it do we lose?
Mhm.
You know, and you're gonna lose. There's just gonna be probably, if I had to guess, the bulk of the audience that doesn't care.
Mhm.
Just like everything else, it's kind of fake in our lives, right? Not to say that film is reality, but it is in a way, right?
Mhm.
There's just you're gonna lose the soul to an extent, I think.
Yeah, that could be. That could be. But you have something unique because I recently came across this case where this person came to me and they said that they are generating that they have created a AI architect.
Oh yeah, that's
Thing.
coming for architecture too, big time.
Well, and so he said this to me, and he said, yeah, we went through all these different codes for these different places, and we added all these codes in, and all you do is you type in like whatever design you want, and it generates the design based to the code of the area. And then I push back as a data scientist because I do. I said, look, if I know first principles analysis, that an AI image generation or any sort of Gen AI image machine cannot produce the same image twice, the same identical image twice, then that means that what you've created is not scientific.
Why could AI not create the same image twice?
Oh, because it can't. So
Really? Is it just
yeah.
programmed not to?
It just can't. So it's
Or it's just there's so many factors, it's literally like lightning striking twice in the same place.
yeah, kind of like that. So
So not that it can't, it's just highly improbable.
it's very improbable, and I mean the best way you can do it is with animations of animals, because we have
Okay.
so many photos of animals, and it's hard to tell one mallard duck apart from
Yeah,
another.
but if I get what you're saying, where you're going with this is that because it's as unique as a snowflake or a fingerprint, that there is a type of art in that?
No, I'm just trying. No, where I'm going is what this guy has claimed to have created with his architect design.
Yeah, no, I
software.
understand that because you've got what are the snow loads, what are the thermal requirements, how deep
right,
what's the frost
and
level?
there is no freaking way an image generator thing, an image. And
Well,
I
no,
can
that's
go
not going
into-
to be. I think you'd. My guess is, well, he could probably pair it, but my guess is it's probably you're inputting some CAD vectors, right? The lines, the shapes, and then it's then dictating the engineering for how deep the foundation is, what the windows and insulation are rated for, what the snow load is on the roof. You know, all these things that are geographically changed, environmentally changed. And then I guess there's like RCWs for certain, cities, jurisdictions, even states that say these are our amendments to the UBC, which is the Universal Building Code. But we have a Universal Building Code that basically covers everywhere, and then you have amendments for different regions. So I guess the question for me is it doing the design, the programming? Are you just saying, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 2 stories, lots of windows, this color and this architectural style, and then you plug in the geolocate and it does everything from that point? Or are you saying
That's what they claim.
this is the design, give us the, just make sure everything's meeting code?
Nope, you type it in just like you would
Just
an
like
AI
that. You
image
just basically,
generator.
like a realtor would describe a house, basically.
Yeah, literally.
This many square feet. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like
and then everything.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that that's where we're going, but to hear that we're there already.
Nah, we ain't there. And the thing is he's getting ripped off by Pakistani developers.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
So,
they
but
don't
either way-
care about the IP.
Yeah. So he.
I mean, I don't know if Pakistan, but I know like China wouldn't care.
Yeah. Well, he is one of many people that I've found that are falling victim to this sort of shit.
There's an animal out your window that I literally cannot tell if it's a cat or a dog. I'm leaning cat.
Oh yeah, that's Toto. He's a dog. Yeah, I mean he looks like Toto from.
Well, it's at a distance, but
Yeah, I just call him Toto. He's a little Yorkie.
yeah, no, I mean technology is going crazy places. You're at the forefront of it with what you do, or at least you're way more embedded and at the front lines or witnessing the front lines than I am. But it's going to become very important to what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out how to use it as a tool. I've leaned on you a little bit for, hey, can you help me out with this AI stuff? And you've pointed me in some directions, and that's helped. But I still feel like I'm in the dark. And I guess not in the dark, but I just feel like, man, there's got to be so much more to this that I could be utilizing at such a higher level and be way further ahead than I am right now. Because it's really just that legwork that I need to do right now that's slowing me down. And then part of it's the way that my mind works, because I want all the pieces to fit together, and there's so many pieces on this one. But really, if I had the AI, that would help me. When you're sitting there explaining data mining to me, I'm already thinking, how can I use this? How could I use this with all the information I want to put together? But then I always have to keep taking that step back, because I'm kind of an information nerd like yourself. But when I'm really putting something together to deliver to an audience, I have to think, come on, man, how much time are you going to spend on that? And are 2% of the people even going to care? And are the other 98% of the people actually just, you're going to lose their attention getting into that kind of detail? You actually turn people off. So I keep having to go back and simplify. And I keep getting drawn towards that type of a road. But that being said, that was a little tangent. If I had AI to assist me at the level that I think that it could, that I just don't know how to use it at that level yet, I think I'd be in a much different place already. I'd be much further along on this process, because I know the story now.
Yeah, possibly.
But the dialogue would still be staring me in the face.
Yeah. There's a lot of uses to it. So there's the image generators. Now those are the ones that a lot of the people in the few and camera people and cinematographers hate. They don't like the image generators.
Well, I don't either. I think that's kind of where I draw the line. But again, that's personal taste. But I think seems to me that there's near consensus in the film community, at least our local film community, that AI is not.
Yeah, but if I had the budget and I had to shoot something like that, I would use an older lens. Because I shit you not. So I was going on some YouTube wormhole, and all of a sudden, it was the German tank problems looking for stuff, and it populated with this movie made in the 1980s about the Nazi SS and how these guys walked into some town and they rounded up all the kids and they came in, they're all singing and doing all this shit, and they load them into a church, they lock them in a church, and they freaking kill them and everything. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, holy shit, this looks like a documentary that was made then in color. because it was made in the 1980s. But it looked like it was a legit, real documentary color to me.
Like it was
field
footage?
Yeah, field footage colorized.
Or like,
it
right.
was so good. Like you couldn't replicate that in the newer stuff, like the movie Fury. It just couldn't replicate.
Well, I think actually,
And you alluded to it, like these movies that are shot at a different time that age well. That one aged well.
That's pretty wild. But you're saying it looked like it was shot in 1942.
Mm-hmm. Colorized. It looked great because it was shot in the 80s with the 80s sort of cameras.
Well, maybe
lenses.
maybe it was shot in the 80s with color film on a 1942 camera and lens.
Maybe. Who knows?
You know, I think I'm no expert there, but from what I can tell, a lot of that is like what makes it look like a film from then is the timing of the reel, you know, and there's almost like that subtle stutter to the film. Just the movement's different. And that, I think, is just the frame rate. For, you know, I don't even have the terminology, let alone the knowledge, but that would be my inclination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that stuff's really cool. And that would be cool to, like, get old. Like, even then, like, I go harkening back to Tombstone again, right? Like, the opening scene there's a bunch of footage that they shot in 1990, what is it, 3 or whatever, that came out, 92, 93, where they used cameras from the, like, early 1900s, maybe even late 1800s, I don't know the exact date, but they used that, they had to replicate the film, obviously, but I think largely it's frame rate.
Have you watched that recent Western? It's like... God, it was a good one. It was on Netflix, and it wasn't one of the... It was like 1810 or something, but it didn't relate to Yellowstone or any of that Yellowstone crap that they have going on.
It wasn't The Abandons, was it?
No, it was the...
Good. I think that one's
It
terrible.
was one they recently had.
Is it the one that... I think I know what you do. Is it called, like, American...
Yeah.
The name sounds savage, right?
And it starts off in a train station, right? And the train station, it almost threw me off. It almost left me. I almost bounced. But I looked it up because the train station had corrugated steel roof. And I'm like, what? They didn't have corrugated steel roofs back then. And I looked it up.
They did.
And they just made it. And I'm like, oh, no shit.
It was new technology.
I'm going to keep watching. All right, so I kept watching, and it was savage. I loved the way that and the Mormons were in it.
Yeah, and the Mormons were like really kind of almost like gratuitously evil.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there was plenty of terrible stuff coming out of there.
That was a great, phenomenal show.
That actor that played, like, he didn't play, can't remember who he played. It wasn't Brigham Young, but like one of his, effectively like a general, let's just call it. That guy was creepy. That acting was solid. I know exactly what you're talking about. John Bridger was one of the main characters, right? Because they're at Fort Bridger, which is, you know, our neck of the woods. I know exactly what you're talking. So that was one that I the first episode, I was like, it snagged me. I was like,
well, those arrows going
awesome.
by, like that was good. I'd never seen that.
Yeah.
And that puts you in that primal savagery. Like this was real. There's no 911.
I think that's what it's called. I think it's called American Primeval.
Oh yeah, American Primeval. Yeah, that's what I liked about that. Yeah, it
was interesting. It seemed like there were multiple writers. So John Bridger's character was his dialogue was super well written, but then it was either like they just got tired or ran out of time or had different writers. It was just different quality of writing as it went along. I felt like it just kind of tapered off the quality of the writing. The premise was good. I've never seen anything quite like that. Super interesting. You could tell they were just really going for grit, kind of hardcore, the savagery, the primeval. And it did tell a story, but I felt like I've just nerded out so much on what's true and what's not true. That like when you try and embellish on something too much, it just takes away from it to me. And I feel like at a certain level, it just kind of went too far, and it was just like, this is just kind of silly. It was one of those ones where I just felt like the politics of it were being forced on me.
Oh. Well, I felt that way with... See, there's two that I conflate, right? So there's one with Billy Bob Thornton. And it's funny because they both came out around the same time, right? And that one was kind of corny in the sense that, like, some girl goes out, takes a piss, gets bit by a rattlesnake, and dies. It's like, okay, now I feel like I'm playing the Oregon Trail game, you know?
Yeah.
And that sort of, like, corniness and...
That's the 1883.
Yeah, 1883.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is part of that, Yellowstone sort of
exactly.
universe, if you will.
And then American Primeval was different. Totally.
Yeah, totally different. Well, I mean, they're two different
altogether.
levels. Also, Taylor Sheridan, to me, that's really interesting. It's like, because 1883 to me is one of my favorites by far, and I'm definitely taking notes from it. It's almost hard for me to reconcile the same person that wrote, directed, produced Yellowstone did 1883. Not that I dislike Yellowstone, but I don't get as excited about it as I do 1883. And 1883 was one that it was just, watched it the first time, I was like, that was pretty good. Watched it the second time, I was like, oh, this is really good. Watched it the third time, I was like, holy shit. There's no error in it. The whole thing's like poetic. I mean, every line has a meaning. You get into like, talk about budgets, like they spent all their budget on cast. It wasn't high budget because it was all out on the prairie, right? They just had props and costume and cast, and then whatever else. But that's the bulk of it. They did do up like Fort Worth, and that's again where the white elephant was. That was Billy Bob Thornton's role. But then Sam Elliott, right, is kind of one of the main characters. And then I always forget that country actor's name, Faith Hill's husband.
Tim McGraw.
Tim McGraw.
Yeah, and that's what kind of killed it for
Actually,
me.
really?
Was the Tim McGraw Faith Hill combo. As soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah.
I don't know, man. I really thought they did. I was like, this is. I thought the acting was amazing.
Well, they probably
I couldn't
is.
pick out a Tim McGraw or Faith Hill song for the life of me if I heard it on the radio, but I thought their acting was pretty incredible. And then Isabel May,
it is good.
She did, having her narrate too. So there was kind of like a required formula, right? Where he's like, you gotta have that strong female character, which I like, but oftentimes it just feels like it's filling the quota, and it just feels forced, and it doesn't feel realistic. That to me was done so well. The way he created her, it's believable. She actually feels strong. Really, really connect with her. Then having her narrate everything on top of it, and her voice is just awesome. Was just, to me, that was super powerful. But yeah, man, I thought Tim McGraw he didn't look anything like he looks like other pictures I've seen of him.
Yeah, he does look different.
Yeah, but I liked it. And to be able to make something like that that's literally just takes place in mostly wagons and on horses out in the grass, and make it that dynamic, I think there's a certain talent to that. I thought it was pretty good. That was really good. It's definitely top 3 of the Westerns.
Well, I am being overly critical of it when comparing it to American Primeval because
Well, it depends. What's your flavor, right?
Yeah.
That's more your thing.
But they did cover a lot of great elements, such as the treatment of immigrants. They absolutely hated them. They were just guinea pigs. Like, go forth.
Well, again, that one I do feel like was a little gratuitous. I feel like there was probably a lot of truth to that. But they put... obviously they just wanted to emphasize the point. Again, in the follow-up series, 1923, I feel like... Yeah, I don't know really anything about the history, but I do feel like the whole Jesuit thing was a little interesting. Like, they probably just made that a little more dramatic than... But who knows? Maybe it was just really horrible, and if so, we should know more about it. I know it wasn't. It was pretty bad, but... and like I said, I think that's what makes that Coeur d'Alene tribe story so interesting, is it's like the exception. And maybe not the only one, but probably in large, one of the very few exceptions, and maybe the prime exception.
Well, and they didn't, in the Coeur d'Alene tribe, didn't join the uprising because there was an uprising in like 1920 something.
Oh, I'm not aware of that.
Or 18.
I guess there would be, because that would be when that dates. That's probably what that's based on. Was it in the Montana area, though?
No, we're talking Washington State. We're talking, we had fighting in the mountain passes between rogue Indian nations fighting the state. Like here in Washington, yeah.
No, that wasn't the 1920s. I think you're talking about the...
No, it was probably before the 1920s.
Yeah, like the Plains War. That's the whole George Wright story. And then the Steptoe Butte, there was a big massacre there. And then the hanging, like Hangman Valley.
Yeah.
They had... And the slaughtering of those 700 horses, that just sounds horrible.
Yeah,
they talk about how you can hear the horses. They were just slaughtering horses for 2 days, and you just hear them screaming the whole time. And it's an ugly piece of history, for sure. But yeah, I think that, don't quote me, but I think it was called the Plains Wars or something along that. There were two major battles that I know over at Steptoe Butte, and then at Four Lakes. But yeah, they called like Chief Yakima over that under the auspices of a truce, and then just hung him.
Damn, I need to start reading my shit. I know that I've been to Hangman's Creek out here.
Yeah, which now it's one of those things where there's like a, what do you call it, revisionist history, where there, or just even like, I don't know, you wouldn't call it cancel culture, but almost
Wikipedia
like erasing the history. So where they've changed the name of, it's been on different maps as Latah Creek and Hangman Creek for a long time, but I think getting rid of the Hangman Creek because they decided it's offensive is really, the tribes don't want to get rid of it. They don't want anybody to forget that history. Mm-hmm. But it's offensive and it hurts, so they don't. So yeah, revisionist history. Like I consider myself pretty empathetic, but
Crazy.
I feel like some of these things just like are so counterintuitive. Like you're doing the opposite of what you seem to be attempting to do, or intending to do.
Well, I've been to Hangman's Creek, where the placard is, because I used to live in Fairfield years ago, and
sure.
Back when I was married, my ex-wife, she was like, let's go drive around. So we drove around at night. We drove to Hangman's Creek. We were looking at the placard, and it was like dark and spooky, but nothing.
Well, that's perfect because it's pretty dark history.
Yeah.
God. Well, and then, they renamed the Fort George Wright, or the whatever the road is out there. But the fort that's now Mukagawa is still called Fort George Wright on the map. But I don't know. I mean, history's history. I think it's... You blur things if you start to rewrite it, and rewriting history just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Right? But, I mean, again, maybe that's partially to do with that I'm a student of history, particularly local history, and I'm even more so lately since I've taken this deep dive. But yeah, I mean, you got the Nez Perce story with Chief Joseph and all that, another super sad, awful story. It's an ugly history, man. I'd like to understand more about it. I started to get into it quite a bit on this story, and then had to cut myself off because I needed to focus on the actual meat within that time window.
Yeah.
I was really hoping I could put that in there, but there are a lot of like these. You can paint the story with, you can tell the story by painting a picture because you are working in images. And when I talk about this, like you talk about like the dynamicness of it, Coeur d'Alene Lake and the Coeur d'Alene River was like the first big part of the navigation, right? So you've got these big old giant, the steamers and the paddle wheel boats, big old ones, which I think is just a fun part of the story, and it's so integral to the beginning of it, and that's where how they were moving the ore and getting up to the Silver Valley. They just had a narrow gauge railroad from the Mission up to Wallace, and then Burke. Burke's another. I should finish with that because we're probably running out of time here, but or losing people's interest at this point. But they talk about those first ships, those first boats that were coming up the Coeur d'Alene River, and there was just basically like these just ghosted out Indian villages, they were somewhat nomadic, and they would move around during the hunting seasons, but they didn't leave things behind. All those villages were there because that tribe was decimated. Like 90% of that tribe died.
From the disease?
Pox or whatever it was. Measles, I'm not sure. Smallpox, I think, is mostly what it was. I should know what the predominant one was. But again, it tells that story. Like, why? I think that's why they sent for the black robes. They're like, we need a god to save us because we were just, 9 out of 10 people died. Could you imagine? Like, almost every family, there'd just be one person left.
Well, they were wise. They were the heart of the owl.
Yeah, but going back to like painting that story in pictures, is that just that picture right there tells you something, and then you put a little more information in there so that people.
Yeah,
know
I'm imagining a steamboat.
Yeah,
like going up Coeur d'Alene and just going by all these decimated
It's
tribes.
dark, but it's romantic. It catches your soul, right, a little bit, and makes you really think about it, and you capture it in a way on film that optimizes that delivery, that message, and the reality of it. I grew up around here. That's what literally, if you were to paddle upriver, you'd paddle right there. If Coeur d'Alene turns into Coeur d'Alene Lake and then turns into Spokane River, it's the same stream of water. It's just right up that stream. All this stuff happened.
Yeah, and to think back then, going up the first people taking a steamboat up Coeur d'Alene Lake,
right?
And you'd be like, there's no 911 to call. There's nothing. We could get killed. Something could happen. But I imagine they'd be armed. They'd have to be men of grit. These first explorers, these first people that came.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the very first, even before Lewis and Clark, supposedly were the French trappers. That's why these Pend d'Oreille and Coeur d'Alene and all these French names are around here. And like heart of the all is what Coeur d'Alene means. Coeur is heart, which all was just like a sharp axe that you would use to skin animals. So these trappers would come up and they'd trade with the Indians, and apparently the Indians were very sharp traders. And that's where they got that name.
Huh.
Yeah, and like Nez Perce.
Oh, I thought it was
like
heart of the owl, like an owl.
No, all like a tool. It's a tool for scraping the meat off the skin.
See, I just
very
learned something
very
new.
Sharp tool. Yeah.
See, my ignorance. I think heart of
an
owl.
Man,
like
hardly anybody knows what that means. It seems.
Damn, that's.
But
cool.
This is like if this could be done well, it really brings. I'm really excited about how it could just really deliver. Like people would be glued into the delivery of the history of the area which they inhabit, and know the truth about it, and that it is exciting and sad and amazing and everything. Like it's got all the elements, man. It's got really great things that happen, really horrible things that happen. To me, it's just you also just deliver this sort of human nature message as well.
Well, cool.
Like this is where we're at. And again, that's back to unity. Like, okay, we're always gonna fight. Okay, it's human nature. Mm-hmm. But maybe we could just try to not a little more. It feels like we've lost sight of that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of probably one of my core messages, if not the core message of my whole story.
Well, cool. Well, we're at 2 hours, 8 minutes. Time flies when you're having fun. So, last but not least, where can people find you?
Where can people find me?
Yeah, how can they get in contact with you?
I'm hiding out.
You're hiding out, all right.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine.
People will find me. Come out to see our local film community. I'm usually hanging around there.
Yeah, come out to the few.
Thanks for the opportunity for the plug,
and come out to Rick's Actors Dojo, and you can catch Larry there too.
100%.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Be sure to like this video, hit the subscribe button, and share this, because sharing is caring. Smash that bell, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Podcast that you like.